Coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of the Santa Monica Mountains, I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. This is a special presentation of politics, prophecy, and the supernatural report. And of course, we'll be talking about the days of chaos. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Folks, the feds are out of options. Rate cuts, money printing, balance sheet reversals. They call it policy, but it's really panic. This is endgame economics, where hope replaces discipline and the illusion of control finally breaks. They're not cutting rates because things are strong. They're cutting because the system is cracking. Inflation's eating your savings. The labor market's stalling. Confidence in the dollar is fading fast. For decades, the Fed built a house of paper. Now they're striking the match that could burn it down, leaving you and me to pay the price. Every cycle ends the same way: bubbles, bailouts, and broken retirements. That's why smart investors are moving what's real: gold and silver. When's the last time you actually held the wealth you spent your life working for? Folks, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have been helping Americans move from paper wealth into real, tangible assets. Numbers on a screen can disappear. Physical gold and silver, they've outlasted every crisis in history. Folks, please check out noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com. Get your free wealth protection kit today, noblegoldinvestments.com. Discover how simple it is to protect your future. So before I get into this, I got to show you this. This is so cool. This was given to me by Jim Peters, who's just a wonderful man, and he's definitely supported this ministry over the years. So let me get it in the camera. So Jim watched our Roswell show, and this is why he sent me this. It is really cool. And it's a coin, and on the back of the coin is another, like a UFO, basically. So the inside of the coin says Roswell, New Mexico, 1947, and it gives the latitude and longitude. There it is right there. So I want to get into this because this book came out in 2015, and in some ways it's almost prophetic, because this is where we are. I'm going to be reading from the foreword. The idea for the Days of Chaos began when I first learned of the so-called Miami zombie attacks, in which a man was shot 12 times while trying to eat another man. So this was the Miami cannibal, and I covered this years ago when it happened. Really bizarre. According to early police reports, the man was supposed to have been on bath salts, a potent hallucinogen. However, after an autopsy was performed on the zombie, it was found that he did not have the potent drug in his system. This begs the question, what set this guy off? What motivated him to engage in such a diabolical act that stunned our country and the world? According to police reports, the man was told to stop assaulting the victim, and when he did not comply, the officer shot him. The zombie turned and growled at the cop like an animal. Imagine a man who is literally eating the face of his victim, and when shot, doesn't seem to be bothered by it, as he growls and returns to his grisly work. I believe that there was something far more sinister at work here, and in my opinion, it bears the fingerprints of an ancient evil that has waited for millennia and is now manifesting in ways that we have never seen before. Thus, I call it the Days of Chaos. I have a blog that began in 2008. Of course, the blog shifted into what we do here now, so everything is video. And as of this entry, it has more than 2,000 articles that I have posted. Actually, when I stopped the blog, there was upwards of 3,000 articles that I had written, but I digress. There are literally hundreds of stories and commentaries that will serve as the basis for this book. I will reference a series of blogs on a particular subject and show the progression of events. Thus, we will be able to see if this is business as usual or something more. I will introduce the reader to the subject matter and will also comment at the end to provide a wrap-up of the material. I believe that something has shifted in the waning years of 2009. I posted an entry on the blog about it, and I will reproduce it here. I want to take a moment to elaborate what I mean by shifted. I am a frank supernaturalist. What I mean by this is that I believe in the biblical paradigm, or what we would refer to as supernatural events that we see demonstrated throughout the Bible. Dreams, visions, words of knowledge, and miracles are what should be the norm for the Christian who was born from above and is walking in the power of the Spirit of a living God. Sadly, much of the supernatural has been left out of Christianity today and has been replaced with programs, building projects, man-centered kingdom building, and everything else but what the early church did, which was to wait upon the Spirit of a living God. So it goes on from there. And what we see with things like, and I'm just going to get into the index here because I think you'll find this interesting also, the one world government. What happened at Davos recently, right? Fukushima disaster. Do we realize that that's never stopped, that the fuel rods burn through the containment in that nuclear power plant, and no one knows where they are. But the water is absolutely contaminated, and we don't know what to do with it. Financial collapse. We are now $34 trillion in debt. Think about that. $34 trillion in debt. How can we possibly ever become solvent again? Good question. Lawlessness? I mean, do I even have to address that? All we need to do is just look at the beatings that happen. Look at the carjackings. Look at the chaos in some of our cities. And of course, the UFO phenomena, the coming great deception. That's just part of it. That's not all the chapters in the book, but it's some of them. And this is why Days of Chaos, and I realize some of you will go, gee, that sounds like an infomercial. It's not meant to be an infomercial. It's meant to arm you and give those who are interested a good overview of where we are and what's going on. So with that being said, things are heating up in the Middle East, no doubt about that. In fact, there was a story today that talked about rockets being fired by Hezbollah into Israel. So it's not going away. And it's, folks, I don't wish this. I don't want this, but it makes me wonder if we are looking at the ancient prophetic text, specifically of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Don't know, which is why we watch and we don't predict. We just look. If it jumps into that, great. I will tell you this. There was a picture, and I'll try to send that to John Adam, recently taken of Putin, obviously from Russia, Erdogan from Turkey, and get this, Khamenei from Iran. What's interesting about this, Khamenei is Shia, and Erdogan is Sunni. On the same stage together, putting aside that basically hundreds of years, millennia of hatred between the two sects of Islam. So something is brewing, and I'm keeping a close eye on it. If you want to know where I go, Raptor News, R-A-P-T-O-R, Raptor News Israel. I go there. Divine Justice is another one on YouTube. Raptor News, Divine Justice. Those two sites, I think, have a great interview, and I want to thank our contact, Bill, for alerting me to Raptor News. They're pretty straight ahead, no fluff. They just report what's going on. Folks, I get a lot of email. I'm very familiar with trolls on our YouTube channel. I know that people sign up, they subscribe, and then they never get anything. And I realize, are we shadow banned? I mean, who knows? Who knows what the truth is? I just know that sometimes we do a report and we'll get 20, 25, even 30,000 hits. It's a lot of people seeing our stuff. I think it could be a lot more because I know we have a larger footprint than what we're seeing on YouTube, but it is what it is. Then, of course, we post on Rumble and all these other platforms as well. This came in from Rumble, and I love these guys. They never really tell you their real name or who they are. More than likely, it's a troll. But I wanted to address this and make it really clear as to where I stand. So this is about the rapture. And the email is to notify you that a comment has been made on multiple raptures questions with LA number 77. Dr. D13 made the following comment. So right there, check. he's afraid, he or she is afraid to use their real name. Gee, I wonder why. So they can say anything that they want. They can disparage people. They can, lie. They can act like they're saying the truth, but they're not saying the truth. And I just want to make this really clear. No such thing as a rapture. LA knows this, I suspect. He just doesn't want to alienate anyone. No one does. But we're all here for the duration. Bible says so. We're the salt of the earth. Without God's people, the earth has no purpose, period. Well, that's his opinion. And what I take umbrage in is he's reading something into what I believe. He's trying to tell you that, LA knows that this isn't really true. We're here for the duration. No, we're not here for the duration, sir. It's a time of Jacob's trouble. Now, you can believe what you want to believe. I'm not going to argue it. But the 7-year tribulation period is those 7 years that are missing in the prophet Daniel. Daniel speaks of it. Messiah will be cut off. That 7-year period deals with what? The nation of Israel. It doesn't deal with the church. Those who say that the church has inherited all the promises of Israel, which basically is replacement theology, secessionism, no. That's another man-made invention, basically in modernity, and it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. The whole amillennial perspective, where there really is no 1,000-year literal reign of the Messiah in Israel. He comes back to Jerusalem. His feet touch the Mount of Olives. That thing splits in two. It's the time of Jacob's trouble, not the time of Bob's trouble. We're not through it. Read Revelation chapter 3, and people will argue, well, that's just to one of the churches. Well, the churches are a type, my friend. The churches are a type, okay? And when we read sequentially those chapters in the book of Revelation, and we come to chapter 3, what does it tell us? What does it tell us? Then we get 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16. The Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and the trump of God. The dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up. Where? In the clouds. We who are alive and remain will be caught up in the clouds together with those who have gone before us. The dead in Christ rise first. We're caught up where? Into the clouds. And so shall we be evermore with the Lord. Now, I can't say it any plainer than that. There is a rapture. We're not appointed to wrath. What people don't understand, this is the wrath of God Almighty. When Jesus breaks that seal in the heavenly realm, remember, it says no one is, here's the seal, no one is able to, or the scroll, no one is able to open that scroll. No one. In heaven and on earth and under the earth. Gee, I wonder who's under the earth. That's a 3-hour conversation. The bottom line is the rapture of the church is real. Once that scroll is open, literally, heaven breaks loose. And what I mean by that, that's where the judgments begin to happen. The church is not here. We are in the heavenly scene watching the Lamb of God open that seal and read that scroll, which I believe, and I got this from Gary Stearman, is a legal indictment against planet Earth. You say, well, what have we done that's so bad, L.A.? I'll tell you, thanks for asking that. When you look at how many billions of aborted babies on the planet, what is it now, 1 billion? If you were to take, and I've told you this before, if you were to take a tour from the North Pole to Alaska, to Toronto, to Washington State, to Washington, D.C., to Los Angeles, to Mexico City, all the way down through South America, Lima, Peru, all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, you wouldn't see one person. That's what 1 billion people look like. That's what 1 billion people look like. That's how many abortions we've had. You don't think the blood of the innocent cries out? Now, those who have a completely different ideology than we do, and that's fine, believe what you want to believe, they say it doesn't matter. We say it does matter. It matters greatly. Life begins at the moment of conception. There is a burst of light when sperm goes into ovum. I didn't really mean to get down that whole rabbit trail, but 1 billion aborted babies? Are you serious? Since Roe v. Wade? Seriously? You don't think that the blood of the innocent cries out? We're there in the heavenly scene watching all this transpire. We go to the marriage supper of the Lamb. We're not there. We're not there for the time of Jacob's trouble. Then, Revelation 19. Behold, I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse, whose rider is faithful and true. Of course, that's Jesus. His eyes are like flaming fire. On his head are many crowns. He has a name written on himself that no one but he himself knows. He has a name written on him that no one but he himself knows. He is dressed in a robe dipped in blood. He's called the Word of God. It's pretty straight ahead who that is. The armies of heaven follow him on white horses, dressed in fine linen, white and clean. We get the white horse. We ride with him on the white horse. And you know what? Those horses can fly. We become the white horse police force. Let me do it again. 3, 2, 1. We become the white horse police force. Out of his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. He treads the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God. And on his robe and on his side is written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Folks, we go back with him. I was there 44 years ago for 3 seconds. I was a brand new Christian. I had never read the book of Revelation. I had no idea of where I was or what was going on. And a few days later, I told this to my pastor. He said, was that a vision? I said, no, Pastor Fred, it was not a vision. I was there for 3 seconds. Like Paul, in the body or out of the body, I can't tell you. The rapture is very dear to me. I was also taken decades later, and I found myself in the rapture. I was there again for 3 seconds. In the body or out of the body, it was not a vision. Second one, I am transported. I realize there's a great throng of people as far as the eye can see. There's the holy reverential silence that permeates the scene. We're not packed together like sardines. Second one, I'm there, and I realize that I've been transported. Second two, there's a holy reverential silence. Second three, I do this, and I'm looking down at my solar plexus. I believe that's where our soul resides. That's conjecture on my part, but it's got to reside someplace. And I think our soulish nature is here. And I went like this. I looked at my solar plexus, and my hands were raised like this, realizing my sin nature was gone. And the beginning of at the beginning of 2024, I came out with a statement: no flesh, no sin, no death, no sting. Hail to the King! Hail to the King! Hail to the King! And that was a mental picture. I was there on a white horse in a glen with other men on white horses, and I led that praise to the King himself on his white horse, Jesus, of course. No sin, no death, and I led that cry of victory to the King of Kings, obviously Jesus. No flesh, no sin, no death, no sting. Hail to the King, hail to the King, hail to the King. I mean, that's so much better than any Lord of the Rings episode you could ever watch, because we're there and it's real. It's not a film. It's not fiction. It's there. What was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding right in front of us. I hope that clears this up. I am a believer in the rapture of the church. I was there for 3 seconds, and it was unbelievable. I'll never forget it. Bill, thanks so much for joining us, and I want to give Bill some kudos here. He just got the Doctor of Letters. It's not an honorary doctorate. It's a Doctor of Letters from Louisiana Baptist University. This is the highest award you can possibly get, and he deserves it because he's been plowing in this field of biblical prophecy for decades. He's been ridiculed. He's been scoffed at. He's been ignored. There's been hit pieces written on him. But guess what? A lot and much of what Bill has written about is now coming to the forefront. And it's with great, it's our honor to have him here, but we celebrate your...
Thank you, L.A. That is so kind of you. Yeah, I was struggling with some really bad health issues, as you know, with my back. I'm gotten very severe. Fortunately, I've had a back surgery recently that was very successful. And in the midst of that, they awarded me with this doctorate degree.
So cool. This is so cool. So we rejoice with Bill. You know, I just want to set something straight here. We're not making any of this up. These are headlines. This morning there was a headline from... I'm assuming Khomeini, but from the Iranians, basically, who stated this: if the Israelis attack, we will annihilate you. We will annihilate you. That's what they said. Mm-hmm. When you hear that, where do you go? What are you thinking?
I think that's a very legitimate threat. That is certainly part of their whole program, foreign policy toward Israel. That's why through the years they have established their reach throughout like an octopus tentacles. To the proxies, Israel's fighting on 7 fronts with Hezbollah, with Hamas, with the Houthis, Bashar al-Assad in Syria, Shiite militias in Iraq. You got the West Bank Palestinians, this Islamic Palestinian Jihad there, and Iran itself. I think they're actually fighting on an eighth front because you put the international community in their anti-Semitism and movements against Israel as almost like another proxy of Iran's.
So the war in Gaza seems to be dwindling down. I want to just, and you probably know this, when you go into Scripture, and specifically the conquest of the Promised Land, it says very specifically, it names 3 cities, and the lead city that Joshua and Caleb did not go in is Gaza. It's right there in our Bibles. And I'm not saying that Hamas, is in any way connected to the Nephilim. What I am saying is that that territorial spirit, in my opinion, has never been deposed, which is why we get the atrocities that we see on October 7th. But that operation seems to be dwindling. All eyes go north. And for me, I'm looking at what Turkey might do. Russia's already in there. Assad is with the Iranians. You just mentioned that. This is unprecedented, in my opinion. What are your thoughts when you see what's happening on the northern border?
Well, I watch it very closely, as you know, right about the prophetic implications, especially in the Middle East, of the events, especially that are going on presently. October 7th changed everything. There's no going back to the status quo, in my estimation. Too much damage going on. And so I think now we look at the point, well, could we now be getting into the prophetic realm? Are we going to now we start to see prophecy start to roll off their ancient parchments and pound down on that Middle East pavement? I think the answer to that is yes. Now, Israel's had its way for the most part with the attack, their war with the Hamas and the Gaza. Of course, now the Biden administration is trying to dictate the terms on some levels, it appears to be, by withholding munitions and things like that. But what we're finding now, the shift is really the focus is going toward the northern border with Israel.
Absolutely.
And we have to keep an eye on Iran, which how you started this program. We're talking about Iran. The IAEA Inspector General Grossi came out on May 19th and said that he is concerned that Iran is just several weeks away, not several months, he says, from having a nuclear weapon.
Let me stop you right there. And I realize this is speculation. If Iran actually gets a nuke, do you think there'll be a pause, or do you think they'll just go right to Tel Aviv with it? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think they're going to need more than one, and they're going to have to do it. We remember that on April 13th, they lobbed over about 320
drones,
missiles, ballistic missiles. And
let me stop you again. That's unprecedented.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we haven't seen that type of an exchange between those two countries. Unbelievable.
Well, exactly. And basically, and it was highly unsuccessful. And many of us believe it was a God thing, that God protected Israel from that, because those were intended to do serious damage. And if they were going to strike their targets, 99% of those, if you're not familiar with that, were intercepted. Primarily by Israel, but with the help of the United States, Britain, and even on some smaller level, even Saudi Arabia, kind of a strange bedfellow for Israel. But if those would hit their targets as intended, then that would have created a massive problem. Everything would have changed the direction at that point. They would have had to have, and they do have presently, Hezbollah ready to fire about 6,000 missiles a day in the first few days. Syria with chemical weapons. The Houthis can go to Tel Aviv with precision-guided missiles. They would have had to go into the full-scale war at that point in time, the proxy war, which will be coming.
And I think that's what we're looking at. I think it's going to go full-blown here.
It's coming.
I hope I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong, because the prophecies talking about major destruction, especially like in Damascus, the capital of Syria, where the Bashar al-Assad regime is. We're told in Isaiah 17:1 that city will cease from existing. It will be reduced to rubble overnight.
And Israel has already threatened to destroy Damascus. We're not making this up. Israel has threatened that if you do this, we will destroy Damascus. That's a matter of public record.
Right. So, they're a proxy of Iran. And so one of the first casualties of the proxy war, where Israel will take a hit, because in the Isaiah prophecy, it talks about Israel actually taking a hit and finding itself in a self-defense prison rules fight. And that's where you have to pull out their best, weapon off the shelf. Their worst kept secret, their nuclear program, but their strongest weapon. And one weapon can destroy a full city. And they've got tactical, strategic nuclear capabilities. And the prophecy goes on to say it happens overnight. So it looks like a nuclear exchange is coming soon to the Middle East. Now, the other thing about Iran, the JNS reported just recently that the centrifuges they've upgraded to in Fordow, they can actually now produce several nuclear weapons per month once they get to that stage. Some of us believe they've already got explosive-ready nuclear weapons. Your question was, will they get one where they put it on the warhead and send it immediately? I don't think so, because that's what they saw happen on April 13th.
They're backing up.
They can't send one thing and have that
Right.
the one nuclear weapon get blown up mid-flight.
I don't want that.
But what they can do when they've got a barrage of weapons, 6,000 missiles from Hezbollah, a couple of whatever's left of Hamas, Syria throwing chemical weapons, now all of a sudden they can start sending in all their missiles again, and in the midst of those missiles, they can have a couple of nuclear warheads coming forward. I don't think they would start with the nuclear weapon. I think they would try to do what they can without the nuclear weapon. They might they might feel they've got enough manpower to do it without going nuclear. But if they do go nuclear, they do have a ballistic missile, intercontinental, hypersonic, which can travel to get to Israel in 400 seconds, which is 6.66 minutes, and it can carry a nuclear warhead. It travels 5 times the speed of sound. So I mean, Israel's finding itself in the most dangerous territory it's ever found itself.
But we know the prophecy states that, with Ezekiel 30 and 39 more, that the nations will know that the Lord has acted on behalf of Israel. Is that speak to that?
Well, that's a major marquee prophecy, Ezekiel 30 and 39, where Russia puts together this formidable coalition with Turkey and Iran, and there's actually 9 members in total, coming against Israel when Israel is dwelling securely without walls, borders, no gates in the latter days. And I think you and I both agree it's the latter days, right? Pretty obvious there. And so we're all watching for that, because God has to stop that supernaturally. It's too formidable. Right now, if this prophecy was to find fulfillment now, I think there's a couple of things that have to happen prior, and we'll talk about it perhaps. But if it would happen now, there'd be 2.5 million troops from Russia's coalition able to come against Israel. It's got about 176,000 troops and some reserves. I mean, it's a David and Goliath story.
It is.
So they can't, the point being, they can't stop them. We don't find the American troops involved in Ezekiel 38. But what we do find is God taking the helm supernaturally with a great earthquake. When the great earthquake happens, all these troops who speak different languages are going to freak out. It creates this, says every man's sword will be against his brother.
That's unbelievable.
And then it says it'll be flooding rain, great hailstones, fire and brimstone. It'll be an Old Testament, and the world's going to go, wow, that was supernatural. Wow, was that the God of the Jews? And God wants them to realize that, because it says when that's done, in Ezekiel 39, verse 7, I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel. They shall not profane it anymore, and the nation shall know that I am the Holy One in Israel. So he's going to use that event. It says he's going to put the hooks in the jaw of that coalition and drag them for plunder and booty, and he's going to stop it. And then say, listen, I am the holy God of the Jews, the promise keeper of Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant, and the promise keeper to believers in Jesus Christ.
My last question to you is this, and I realize it's a controversial question. There's a lot of people all over the map in regards to the rapture of the church. There are people on the far side that don't believe it's going to happen at all, that it's just an invention of Darby, a couple 100 years ago, 150 years ago, whatever. It's all recent. And yet we know, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep. We shall be changed at a moment, twinkling of an eye. At the last trump, the dead will rise first. We who are alive, I'm mixing the two, will be caught up together with those in the clouds. So I believe in the rapture. I think we're close. So you've got people who don't believe in it at all, people who believe in a pre-trib, others mid-trib, others, post-trib, and then others that we have another 50 years before that's going to happen. What are your thoughts? Where do you think we are?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm happy to say I don't believe this is a salvation topic. Thank God.
No,
it's not. So we can have our opinions on this.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree.
I'm a pre-trib rapture believer. Matter of fact, I'm so pre-trib LA, I don't even buy post-toast. Bam. So
Rim shot here.
So I believe we're very close, because we're told in 1 Thessalonians and in the book of Romans, numerous places, that we're not appointed to the wrath that will come to judge a Christ-rejecting humanity in the tribulation period. which is the last 7 years on this earth's timeline before the second coming. We're told that we'll be delivered by Jesus Christ from this wrath. We're told in Revelation chapter 3, to the letter to the church of Philadelphia, that will be kept from the hour of trial that tests the whole earth. And we're to comfort one another with these words, 1 Thessalonians 4:18. So I think there's many strong arguments for why it's a pre-tribulation rapture, but how close are we to it? And of course, that's the mystery. I mean,
It is a mystery. Yeah, we don't
know when that's going to happen. There's nothing that has to happen prior. It's an imminent event, in my estimation. As we see all the end times events converging, it used to be the super sign of the end times was the rebirth of the nation of Israel in 1948, fulfilling numerous biblical prophecies. That's when the world hourglass, I think, made its final tip. The end times clock started ticking. But now the super sign of the end times is that all the end time signs are converging. There's no weapon not fashioned, no national relationship not formed, no technology not developed that would prohibit the fast acceleration of one prophecy following on the heels of another, back to back to back, till they're all done. And I think that's leading toward the tribulation real soon. The Gog and Magog war, Ezekiel 38, I believe, is pre-tribulation. That's coming real soon. There's a Psalm 83 war that I write about that I think precedes that. That's looking right at us. It's got a mind as well, and as well, and right, things like that. So we're seeing this happen, not just that, the UFO thing, your specialty, the cryptocurrencies, and leading the way to AI with the mark of the beast and the Antichrist. It's all like right here.
Everything seems to be converging.
And rapidly. And so basically, from my perspective, Jesus could come get us, and he yearns to come get us. Matter of fact, our dear friend Chuck Missler has gone on to be with the Lord. Had a dinner with him one time. We became good friends as we are done. And he said to me, and he was almost emotional. He said to me, Bill, the one thing in all my years of study, and he was just a fantastic Bible teacher. Certainly look him up, Chuck Missler. He said the one thing that has affected him probably the most in all of his years of study is that Jesus Christ actually yearns, desires, and longs to come get his bride.
Weren't we at that table together?
Oh, so you heard that too?
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah.
We were sitting.
He was almost crying.
He was very emotional.
Yeah.
Very emotional.
And that's it. He's just waiting for God the Father to say, go get your bride. Like you would want to go get your bride for your wedding, and longing for that. So in my estimation, the only thing holding that back is, God's long suffering. He doesn't want anyone to perish. But Jesus is probably going, Dad, can I go get him? Dad, can I go get him? Yeah. And I think that's what's the conversation being had out there right now. He wants to come get us right now.
I agree. How do we get a hold of your materials? And folks, I would, we have 15, 20 minutes here. You need to do a deep dive. You need to do your homework. You really do. YouTube videos are great. We've just scratched the surface. Bill you've got resources, you've got books, you've got, how do the folks access your material?
Well, thanks, Ellie. Yeah. You can reach me at prophecydepot.com, Prophecy Depot, like Home Depot.com. And we've got a bookstore there. I've got 11 books and 11 DVDs I've done through the years. Got my articles there. I've got my videos there. You can get to it. We've got a YouTube channel as well. Just you go to YouTube and type in Bill Salus, SALUS. And you'll find me. And so thank you so much, Ellie.
Thank you. All right, folks, there is lots going on. Thanks so much for watching, folks. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back again real soon.
What happens if a mile wide craft shows up of Washington? Who's behind it?
Well, at some level, the government, the military, and the intelligence community.
It is a threat. And it's going to soon become a global threat, and it's going to require a global response.
The UFO phenomenon has become the great off-putting.
We're going to get disclosure accidentally.
An interesting time to be alive. We live in a time where literally the government told us these UFOs are real. We don't know what they are.
The question then is, who are they in contact with? Are they truly extraterrestrial? Has mankind been visited by inhuman entities?
What are your closing thoughts in regard to disclosure?
Floodgates are open, and all bets are off right now.
They're definitely conditioning the masses for some kind of revealing of technology.
We're being visited by extraterrestrials.
You look at the late night talk hosts, when they're talking to all the presidents, and they always bring up the question, are you going to tell us anything? If you look at their faces, they know something.
Folks, the phenomenon is not going away. We go up, they show up. We go up, they come down. To warn of what we believe is the coming great deception. Thanks for joining us, folks. We've got up around 220,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your interest. I'm going to talk about prophecy. Almost one third of the biblical prophetic narrative, the guidebook of the supernatural, our Bibles, is prophetic, has prophetic language in it. Yet, most of the churches in America and even other places don't look at prophecy. They just push it to the side. Why is that? Why is that? Let me tell you why prophecy is important. When we read passages like Genesis 3:15, this is the first promise of someone who is going to rectify what just happened. When sin first enters the world, God promises the Savior, the Messiah, to resolve the problem of sin. That's Genesis 3:15. Your offspring, Jesus is there, pointing to Satan, pointing to the dragon. Your offspring will be at war, enmity with the offspring of the woman. The proto-evangelion, the Messiah, the one coming from the woman's offspring, woman's seed, will crush the dragon's head. It's the entire Bible. I've said that numerous times. It is the entire Bible. The Messiah would be born of a woman. Absolutely. He would be human. That's why he's fully God and fully man. Now, there's 70 major Old Testament prophecies. You can see it right here. You can Google that for yourself and check it out. We don't have time to get into all of them, but I'm going to read some of the highlights, and I think you'll find them absolutely interesting. I know I do. And again, some of these are just mind-boggling. Like, look at this one, Micah 5. The Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Jesus is born in Bethlehem. Genesis 17, the predicted miraculous birth of Isaac foreshadows the predicted miraculous birth of Jesus. Isaiah 7, Isaiah foretold the miraculous virgin birth of Jesus. The Messiah would be called Emmanuel. The Messiah would arrive before the destruction of the temple. The Messiah would be preceded by a forerunner, John the Baptist. A messenger would prepare the way of the Lord, Malachi 3:1, John the Baptist. The Messiah would arrive 483 years after a call to restore and to rebuild the temple. Folks, this is Daniel 9:24. There's books been written about this. So the angel says this to Daniel, from the time to restore and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem to Messiah comes is 483 years. Why is this important? Because 483 years to the second, Jesus arranges for the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And he tells the disciples, go in to the city. You'll find a colt which has never been ridden. Take the colt and come and bring it back to me. And when the owner of the colt says, what are you doing? Tell the owner that the master has need of it. Can you imagine being sent in to take a colt? This is like the Lexus of the ancient world. It'd be like going to a 7-Eleven and there's a brand new Lexus with the keys in it, the motor running, no one's in there, and you hop in the driver's seat, the driver comes out, the owner of the car comes out and goes, hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, the master has need of it. Oh, okay, go ahead and take it. Jesus arranges all of this, and he rides in literally to the second, the 483 years after the decree to rebuild the temple. And that decree, that stele, is in the British Museum, to the best of my knowledge. The Messiah would have a ministry in Galilee and be a light to the Gentiles. The Messiah would perform miracles, absolutely. The Messiah would teach in parables. Just think of all the parables that Jesus, even today, we read the accounts of the gospel, the parable of the rich man, right? And Lazarus and all this. The Messiah would be associated with a new covenant involving forgiveness of sins. I mean, Isaiah 50, the Messiah would be spat upon and beaten. The Messiah would be silent before his accusers, Isaiah 53. The Messiah would be persecuted. Daniel predicted the timing of when the Messiah, folks, there's 70 here. I don't have time to get into all of them. Psalm 22, the Messiah's suffering would include thirst. 22 again, the Messiah's hands and feet would be pierced. This is written thousands of years ago, before the advent of the crucifixion, before the Romans invented this horrible way to die. Yet prophecy tells us all would happen. Look, folks, the bottom line is this. The prophetic word is in our Bibles. It is the only book on the planet that's like it. Yes, Nostradamus has quatrains, and you can go there and read them, but some of them are incredibly ambiguous. The Bible, the guidebook of the supernatural, has a thread of prophecy from the book of Genesis, the very first book, to the very last book in Revelation. Someone is outside of space-time as we know it and can call the end before the beginning and the beginning before the end, both ways, with great specificity. Some of those prophecies I just read to you, you can see that they're not fuzzy at all. Messiah's hands and feet will be pierced. I mean, that's really straight ahead. A sixth grader can read that and understand what he or she is reading. That's where we are. Someone else is outside space-time as we know it. That someone, of course, is the God of the Bible. Time for him is fluid. He can go either way with it. The fallen ones, the fallen angels, they can see further in time, but they're not all knowing. They're not all knowing. And that's a 3-hour discussion. Prophecy is important. Why? Because right now, I believe that we may, underline may be looking at prophecies written thousands of years ago, which may be about to be fulfilled. Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus. Ezekiel 38, where there's a group of nations. Russia is the leading one. Iran, Turkey, which coalesce and go up against a land of unwalled villages. There are those who say that Israel is not a land of unwalled villages. I have been there. Yes, there's a wall to keep out suicide bombers in Jerusalem. I understand that. But you go to Capernaum, and it's a unwalled village. You go to any of the places that we went to on our tour of Israel, and it's a land of unwalled villages. It's there. That prophecy is fulfilled. Isaiah 17 tells us that Damascus will become a ruinous heap. I hope that that's not the case. But all I know is this. What was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding. Folks, it's real. It's all too real. We may be living in a window of time where we are about to see some of these prophecies fulfilled. What was written will come to pass. What is foretold is unfolding. Thanks so much for watching, folks. I am L.A. Marzulli. Check out our 30 films by going to streaming.lamarzulli.net. Do your homework. There's 30 films there. There's 13 books. Number 14 is coming up soon, The Rungs of Disclosure. John Adam, make sure you put that up. We'll be doing a pre-sale on the book, and I'll give you more updates about that. Thanks so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button. I'll be back with more episodes of On the Trail of the Nephilim, pp&s reports, UFO updates, and more stuff as I see fit to bring it to you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you soon. Hey folks, L.A. Marzulli here. I've got book number 14 coming out. It's being published by Charisma Media. It's called Rungs of Disclosure. Let me whet your appetite. What is it, 77 years ago, something happened in Roswell, New Mexico? Was it really a weather balloon or was it something else? Folks, one of the very first chapters in that book delves into the whole Roswell event. What I think happened there was a cover-up, and it began the deliberate obfuscation that continued until 2017. And Tucker Carlson asked Commander David Fravor, in your opinion, what was this tic-tac-shaped UFO that you saw? Commander David Fravor looks right at the camera and says, whatever this was not from this earth. That's the nexus. That's the beginning of the Rungs of Disclosure book. I think it's the most important book I've ever penned. Go to lamarzulli.com, lamarzulli.com. You can pre-order the book, save $5, and that book will be autographed by yours truly. Don't forget, folks, UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. In my opinion, this is the coming great deception that Jesus warns us about. So, Lee, thanks so much for joining us today. And right before I hit the record button, you and I were talking about, where we want to go today. So just, most people who come here understand the Genesis 3:15 narrative. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of that. And I got this from Gary Stearman. Basically, it's, in my opinion, it's the gateway to the rest of the entire Bible. It's a gateway to the Bible. If we don't have the exegesis correct for Genesis 3:15, when we get to other troubling passages like Genesis 6, like the Tower of Babel, like Abraham and the kings, the Sodom and Gomorrah, the destruction thereof, and finally the conquest of Canaan, or Daniel 2:43, which we'll touch on later, or even the Antichrist, the son of perdition. Is that just a title that he gets, or is there something hidden in that title? And of course, I think it's the latter. But the bottom line is, in the Genesis 3:15 narrative, we have the pre-incarnate Jesus in the garden. Adam and Eve are terrified. Something has happened. They don't know what, but they know they've done something that they shouldn't have done. That's why they're hiding. I believe and this is not in the text, I believe they are terrified at this point. You don't hide unless you're terrified. They're terrified. They are just, they know something, but they can't articulate it. They don't understand what's just happened. Then, of course, you got the dragon, the shiny woman, the Kosh, Satan over here. And Jesus says to the dragon, to the shiny one, Nakash, your seed, your offspring, will be at enmity, at war with the offspring of the woman. The one coming from the woman, the Messiah, the proto-evangelium, will crush your head, you will bruise his heel. That's the Bible. Because the whole thing is a seed war. It's the tension between the seed of a dragon and the seed of the woman. So, you know, we and then when you get the passages like Daniel 2:43, you're left scratching your head. What do you mean their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but will not cleave to them? Whose seed are we talking about? Lee, thanks so much for coming on the record. And we're talking, folks, about the Nephilim. And before, I have one more thing I got to get into. People, you know, well, why haven't we been told about this before? Why is all this stuff coming out now? What people don't get, and I was on the phone with our mutual friend, Maldo Gonzalez, this morning. We were talking about this. The idea that the Bible was kept for the people, from the people, for at least 1,000 years. And until Gutenberg, 1444, comes in with the printing press, if you weren't a priest in the Western world, you couldn't read the Bible. And even after it was printed, guys like Tyndale were burned at the stake for translating it. So this whole thing was shut down. Scripture, and that's the plan of the enemy, completely shut down. Nobody can read it. Nobody knows what's in it. So that's only a couple hundred years ago when you really start to think about it. And you get the heels of the Reformation. So as people like yourself and Mondo and Gary Stearman, Chuck Missler, I mean, the list is long. But now we've got the Bible in our hands, and we can go in and look at Genesis 3:15 and begin to talk about it. Because until people had the Bible, no one knew about Genesis 3:15, and it wasn't being taught. Thanks for joining us, Lee. Really appreciate it. So to take it from there, sir.
Well, what I find fascinating is I spent probably 25, 30 years reading the Bible and not seeing the backstory. I had a very good handle on your basic theology, your basic eschatology. But there were some passages that I really didn't know what to do with, and there were others that I had no idea there was something amiss. So when I get introduced to the understanding of the Nephilim, and you see in Genesis 3:15 the seed war, where there's going to be enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. And your mind starts thinking, and you realize, wait a minute, if the seed of the woman is capital G, God, and a woman, the offspring of those two, then there has to be an analogy with the seed of the serpent. And the seed of the serpent, if you're going to uphold the analogy, is a little g God with the seed of the Nephilim line, rather than the seed of the Messianic line. So when you come into the book of Revelation, you see the Antichrist, and the false prophet, who are thrown into the lake of fire. They don't go to the great white throne judgment. This tells you that there's something very interesting going on here. So now, over the years since that discovery, I've discovered some passages in the scriptures, and I'm not the first one to discover them, but it was a discovery for me, that give us some pieces in between Genesis and Revelation that start connecting the black thread of the Nephilim. So one of the ones I find extremely fascinating, I'm just going to read Isaiah 24, 20 through 23, and then we're going to look at a line in 21. I want to make sure people have the context. So we're talking about the day of the Lord. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and it shall be removed like a cottage. The transgression shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day, that is the day of the Lord, that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones on high. Pretty obvious, this is the angelic realm. And the kings of the earth upon the earth. Now, if we just stopped right there, we think, okay, so they all get punished. Okay, let's move on. But the next verse says, and they shall be gathered together the high ones on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth, as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and they shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days they shall be visited. And then we have the signs in the heavens, which again reaffirm in the day of the Lord. The moon shall be confounded, the sun shall be ashamed, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem before his agents gloriously. So this is obviously the day the Lord descends from heaven, and he finds all the fallen angels, the fallen realm, cast them into hell. At the same time that he does this, he gathers up the kings upon the earth. I think that these are the Antichrist and the false prophet and the 10 kings that rule with the Antichrist. These have to be Nephilim. There's no other way that they can be put in hell, but not in the hell that's a preparation for eternal hellfire, but simply a holding place, because they're going to be revisited and let out again after the millennium.
Right. At the end of the 1,000 years. What takes my interest with all of this is, and I actually wrote about this in the Cosmic Chess Match, but Tom Horn preceded me with his book, where Nimrod becomes Gibborim, becomes Nephilim. And when you actually, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, so I'm at a disadvantage here, and I know you are, but when I went in there and I started looking at the words and different translations and just looking at it, and I wrote about this, and Tom Horn again preceded me. Boy, I miss him. He was quite a guy, but I digress. The bottom line is he becomes Gibborim, he becomes Nephilim through ritual sex magic. You can make a case that something is going on there because he gives up his humanity in some way. Similarly, when we skip to the book of Revelation, if you take the mark, and again, I wrote about this in Cosmic Chess Match and other books, you take the mark, you're thrown in the lake of fire. Well, where's the grace and mercy there? There is none. It's the only place in the entire biblical prophetic narrative where grace and mercy is absent is with the Nephilim. That's it. I mean, if you're a Nephilim, there is no grace and mercy. There is no second chance. There is no, Jesus died for you. No. Jesus died for human beings, not Nephilim, which are fallen angels, human women creating this hybrid. So I just find it really interesting, and it makes me wonder whether these 10 kings, like to your point, become Nephilim in the same way that Nimrod did. Your thoughts?
There's probably several explanations that are worthy of consideration for how the kings came about as Nephilim. One of the things I've been considering is that we have a living lineage of watered-down Nephilim blood in the elite families of the world that are behind the global cabal, that are behind the deep states in America and in Europe. And they are the ones that dominate the world. They are the ones who are the puppet masters that play the people that are in the official political offices of the nations of the world. And this is just a theory on my part, but I wouldn't be surprised if Satan himself came down from earth, from the heavenly realm to earth, and had a sexual relationship with a woman from this Nephilim line to bring forth the Antichrist. A similar thing was processed for the false prophet. Mm-hmm. And we have these 10 kings coming out of these existing Nephilim lines, whether they're enhanced by further engagement with the fallen realm, or whether they're just receiving some spiritual inducements of power. I'm not really sure. There's probably a handful of explanations that we could look to. But for me, the definitive thing that we have to be standing on is this is a spiritual reality. Even if we don't have an explanation that's satisfying to us, or that we don't have an explanation that we can give to somebody else that satisfies them, this is a spiritual reality that I don't think we can avoid without being dishonest to the text.
So, we talk about the Nephilim and the seed war, Genesis 3:15. And we mentioned Daniel 2:43. And I remember I heard it first from Chuck Missler, But this goes back into the whole thing again. We were talking about the idea that the Bible was kept from the masses for 1,000 years, even longer. And if you were a layman like you and I are, and read the Bible, you could be killed for that. So passages like Daniel 2:43 are laying literally dormant until the time of the end. Now it's unsealed. And I remember hearing it first from Chuck Messler, and basically, fell out of my chair. I was just blown away. So give us your thoughts on Daniel 2:43.
Well, Daniel 2:43 was really the first piece of the puzzle in between the Antichrist and Genesis 3:15 that fell into place for me. I was familiar with the whole concept. You got the 10 toes of the Roman Empire in the last days, and they're a mixture of iron and clay, and the iron doesn't mix and the clay doesn't mix. And you can see some different analogies here. For instance, the Western democracy does not mix with Middle Eastern autocracy and theocracy. They just don't mix. They're always at each other's throats. You put the Middle Easterners in Europe, they don't quite fit. You put Europe in the Middle East, it doesn't fit. But not many years ago, because I wasn't a babe when I saw this, so it wasn't too long, maybe a decade ago, I saw in Daniel 2:43 that it's not merely talking about the iron in the clay in Daniel 2:43 of the 10 nations. Because we read here, and whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, just like iron doesn't mix with clay. So this is like a little inserted thought here.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us insight into the leaders of the 10 toes. The leaders of the 10 toes, just like the 10 toes of iron and clay don't mix, the leaders of the 10 toes are the serpent seed, and they don't mix with the seed of the woman or the seed of man. Once I saw that, I had the same kind of experience. I almost fell out of my chair.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, this serpent seed lineage in mankind, this isn't just a conspiracy theory by people that are willing to go down the flat earth rabbit hole and some other things like that. This is reality.
What I also find interesting about that passage is the angel talking to Daniel goes, Dan, go your way. I'm paraphrasing here. Go your way. You're going to bring a great life, but the book's going to be sealed up until the time of the end, which is exactly what's happening. And then he gives us like what I call a supernatural clue. This is what the end times are going to look like. Men and women will run to and fro with the face of the earth, knowledge will increase, which is exactly where we are. Until the modern era, men and women did not run to and fro with the face of the earth, and knowledge was very slow. Now it's exponential. It increases, every 4 to 6 months? It doubles. I mean, and as we're speaking, jets are flying all around the planet. So the book is unsealed. People like yourself and Gary Stearman and Chuck Messler and Mondo and others talk about this. It's ongoing. The book is unsealed. The seed is mingling. Let me just shameless. This is Karen Wilkinson, but we published it. Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. Karen was an abductee. She's no longer being taken because she knows the Lord, but she was an abductee. She was taken numerous times, impregnated 3 times, and this is where the rubber meets the road, because she had the seed of the dragon in her. And at the end of the 3rd month, they come and they take that fetus from her and put her in an artificial womb. So hybrids are walking amongst us, the title of Dr. Jacob's book. This is the deep end of the pool. This is troubling. A lot of Christians just recoil from it. They don't want to hear it because it's very troubling and it's very disturbing. But Jesus warns us, and this is what I want you to speak about. Jesus warns us it'll be like the days of Noah. I mean, out of all the scriptures that he could point to, he says it's going to be like the days of Noah when I return. Well, we're in the days of Noah. The seed is being mingled. This is why, going right back to the beginning of the show, the exegesis of Genesis 3:15 is crucial. If we don't get it, we're left, going, now what? Your thoughts?
Exactly. most people understand the flood story if they're a born-again Christian. They understand the front story, which is man is wicked, and the angels and demons deceive us and lead us into sin. And so they understand the front story. And if that's all you understand, you're still going to be saved. You're still going to go up in the rapture. But if you understand the backstory, what happened in Genesis 6, what was behind the flood, what's the backstory to the flood, what's the backstory to the slaughtering of the Canaanites, man, woman, and child, then you're going to have a broader and deeper understanding of the scriptures, and passages that don't quite make sense make sense. So, and this backstory is that there is cohabitation between angels and men. And some people say, well, that when the angels got cast into the pit for doing it the first time, they learned their lesson, and they're not going to go back and do it again. That's a position that some in the academic will hold. And I say, wait a minute.
Right.
Where do we see this lesson learned anywhere else in the spiritual realm? Where do we see it anywhere else with the angels? Where do we see it anywhere else with the demons? Where do we see it anywhere else in the human realm? Unless a person is born again, they will revisit that story over and over again. The angels can't be born again, and so the fallen angels are going to revisit this over and over again. Fire in the heart sends smoke in the head. If you're angry, if you're agitated, if you're filled with passion, you cannot be rational. And folks, the fallen realm is not rational from the same angle that a believer is going to be rational. So once we understand that there really isn't an argument against this cohabitation, and that they're going to be doing the same thing continually, they want to stop the Jewish line. They want to stop the believing line. They want to fill the world with enough of these hybrid creatures that you can't even have a millennium. And God is going to bring this to a screeching.
Yeah, he's got to, because, I mean, it's happening. And, I was on a show a couple of days ago talking about this, and all of this kicks off. You have 1945, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That brings us into the atomic age, followed by 1947, the Roswell event. And, we've got 2 films on Roswell, shameless plug. But why was that saucer even there to begin with? Why was it so, lurking around Roswell, New Mexico? Because Roswell, New Mexico is where the 509 bombing group is stationed. And I would posit that they're, once the nuke goes off, they know that that's their trigger. They know it's their trigger. I think that's when a nuke goes off somewhere on the planet, they know that we're moving into a time where, basically they're gonna show up. But the third dynamic, which kicks the whole thing off, is 1948, the rebirth of Israel. I will gather my captives. I will gather the captives of my people Israel, and put them in their lap. I mean, Amos 9, 14 and 15, that's never to be plucked up again. I mean, that's exactly what we see. And that kicks off the whole ufology as we know it. I mean, everything it's like a plane coming off the runway. Up we go. So the first, and to your point with the hybrids, because they are walking amongst us, the first generation looked more alien, big heads, black eyes, very thin bodies. They look emaciated, they look sickly, stringy blonde hair. The second generation, in my opinion, are the black-eyed kids. They look like children, but they're not children, but they're stunted. And the eyes are black. You never get the eyes right because the eyes are windows to the soul. And in my opinion, these entities don't have a soul. The third generation is the one that Al Matthews encountered, and it's in our film, the 10-part series on UFOs. And she passes, you can't tell, but she's wearing these dark wraparound glasses because the eyes are windows to the soul, and she doesn't have a soul. And when she tries to basically mate with him, and he pushes her off, the eyes go reptilian. So, are they walking amongst us? In my opinion, they already are. We've had not a lot of reports, but reports from people who have had encounters. Lee, I like to keep these interviews pithy and short. So I'm going to give you the last word. Weigh in on it. Tell us where we can find your books, and just your closing thoughts, please.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give a closing thought out of Revelation chapter 16, and then I'll give a little plug for my books and my website. In Revelation chapter 16, we find another really interesting insight, another point on the black thread of the Nephilim. And that's when the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world, to gather them for battle for the great day of God Almighty. Now, whoever the Antichrist and the false prophet are, I want you to notice that they are higher in the food chain than your average demon. They're sending demons out on the same level that the devil himself is sending a demon out. And these frog spirits do the bidding, not only of the devil, but of the Antichrist and the false prophet. In my mind, this implies that the Antichrist and the false prophet are both of Nephilimic origin, and that they are higher in the food chain than your average demon, which I believe the demons are just the spirits of the Nephilim who perished in the flood roaming around. This is a powerful thought. Just want to throw that out there for you folks interested in the subject to consider it, to meditate on it, and connect this with the other passages. So if you want to pursue my ministry a little farther, you can find me Soothkeep on YouTube. Soothkeep.info is my website, and I have a number of books on Amazon. I don't have anything on the Nephilim. I'd like to someday, but I do have a presentation called The Black Thread of the Nephilim, which you can get access to.
Librarian folks, soothkeepers.com, and sooth is spelled S-O-O-T-H. And that's an ancient word for truth. So there you go. Thanks, Lee, for coming on. Really appreciate it, folks. Don't forget lamarzulli.com, Rungs of Disclosure, which gets you into all of that Lee and I are talking about, because this is the coming great deception, in my opinion. And when they do show up, and they are going to show up, perhaps sooner than any of us think, that's the game changer. Lee, thanks so much for coming on the record. Really appreciate it, sir.
It's been a blessing to be with you, Marzulli, brother.
Thanks for watching, folks. Really appreciate it. Remember, there is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. Folks, it's manifesting in ways that I've never seen. Thanks for watching. Hey, folks, Elliot Marzulli here. I've got book number 14 coming out. It's being published by Charisma Media. It's called Rungs of Disclosure. Let me whet your appetite. What is it, 77 years ago, something happened in Roswell, New Mexico? Was it really a weather balloon, or was it something else? Folks, one of the very first chapters in that book delves into the whole Roswell event. What I think happened there was a cover-up, and it began the deliberate obfuscation that continued until 2017. And Tucker Carlson asked Commander David Fravor, in your opinion, what was this tic-tac-shaped UFO that you saw? Commander David Fravor looks right at the camera and says, whatever this was not from this earth. That's the nexus. That's the beginning of the Rungs of Disclosure book. I think it's the most important book I've ever penned. Go to lamarzulli.com, lamarzulli.com. You can pre-order the book, save $5, and that book will be autographed by yours truly. Don't forget, folks, UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. In my opinion, this is the coming great deception that Jesus warns us about.